I'm live. I am reading out of Time Out of Mind, which is the autobiography of Joan Grant. I have been reading books of hers, which are far memory books. And in this book, she explains more about the concept of reincarnation and far memory. This is her still in her childhood. We are now in 1914, and this is chapter 6, entitled New Worlds. While father was in Paris, he had arranged to go to America in September to play tennis with Jay Gould. The war would be won by our army and navy, so he saw no reason to change his plans, and we sailed from Liverpool in the Lusitania. I enjoyed the voyage very much, for, like father, I was a good sailor. Mother and Marjorie and Iris stayed in their staterooms, and Kate was kept busy looking after them. On the second day, we ran into a storm, and a boy called George helped me to invent a splendid game. The carpet had been rolled back in the largest saloon in case anyone wanted to dance. No one did, as it was too rough, so we did backwards and forwards. So we slid backwards and forwards on doormats as the ship rolled, going even faster when I had the bright idea of sprinkling Marjorie's talcum powder on the polished floor. Father took me up to the boat deck to watch us coming in to New York Harbor. It was very beautiful, with skyscrapers shining in the pink light of sunset and mist rising from the Hudson River as though we were approaching a city built on clouds. We were a long time in the customs shed, and when we got to our hotel, I was too tired to notice much, except that the porters and the bellhops were nearly all Negroes. As soon as I saw them, I knew I should like America. Emily Grisby, who often came to Seacourt and is still one of my very favorite people, had a maid called Mary Dabney, who used to be her black mummy when Emily was a child in Kentucky. I loved Mary, for she understood about haunts and nightmares, and used to sing to me in her soft black velvet voice, while she rocked me on her lap when I was far too old to be cuddled by anyone else. I woke early, and as neither Marjorie nor Iris would get out of bed, and only mumbled when I prodded them, I decided to go out and explore New York. Father had given me a $5 gold piece, so I wandered round several shops and bought presents for the family and ice cream soda for me. There were ice creams for sale, even in chemist shops, with names like Knickerbocker Glory and Sunrise Banana Split. I walked a long way between ices. I had forgotten including sodas before the end of the day, and when the lights went on, I realized I had forgotten how to find my way back to the hotel and had no money left. There were far too many people on the pavement now, and I began to be frightened. I think I might have panicked if a small black hand had not slipped into mine, and a warm, soft voice said, "Missy, come home now?" George Washington Jones was a bellhop from our hotel and had been following me all day in case I got lost. No one knew he was with me, so poor mother had been worried. I felt guilty at not leaving a note to say I was only going out for a private explore. She and father had been telephoning policemen and offering rewards, which got larger the more certain they became that I had been kidnapped. I had always been secretly afraid of being carried off by gypsies, but I never thought about them that day, as I saw no caravans in New York. It was a happy day, and ended happily too, for everyone was so relieved to see me that there was hardly any row, and George Washington Jones got the reward, large enough by this time for him to go home to his family in Alabama, and not to have to be a bellhop anymore. Americans chatted to strangers, even foreigners and children, without waiting to be introduced, and nearly every room in our hotel apartment, which was on Fifth Avenue, overlooking Central Park, had a door into the outside corridor, so it was easy to find plenty of people to talk to. Americans moved fast, like children. Even grandmothers were sprightly. Rice pudding had ice cream on top of it. When Kate found me reading in bed and unscrewed the bulb from the bedside lamp, I could see perfectly well by the light of somebody's huge illuminated sign of a kitten endlessly unwinding a ball of wool. Central Park had rocks to climb, and Marjorie let me talk to the other children and tried to make Mother let me have roller skates like they did. But Mother said I would be sure to break my leg again. I had never been in an omnibus or on the Underground Railway until one day it was raining so hard that Mother had to get on a trolley car as there was no taxicabs in sight. She waited for someone to help her up the steps, but the trolley car driver only grinned and said, "Step lively, lady," and she had to hop in quickly before he sent it swaying and clanging down the street. I had a lovely lot of father to myself. Meals and museums and the aquarium and sliding on the ice at an outdoor skating ring. He also took me to billiards matches. Nice because there were no other children, but a bit too long without even whispering. The day he took me up the Statue of Liberty was important. We climbed an open-work iron staircase that spiraled round a pillar, which was the lady's spine. Suddenly a woman, 3 places in front of us, began to shriek and cling to the rail. She thought she was going to fall over and squash on the floor far too far below us. I would have liked to turn back, but this was impossible because we were part of a long snake of people. "Are you feeling all right?" said Father anxiously. I knew he was feeling dizzy too, so I said I was not in the least frightened. A man tied a scarf over the hysterical woman's eyes and took her by the elbow and made her go on walking up the stairs. When we got to the top, she was lying on the floor with the nurse looking after her. We went up to the torch, and there was a wonderful view, but I did not enjoy it as much as I might have done because I kept on thinking of having to climb down the stairs again. We had lunch in a restaurant, and then Father, who knew I had not enjoyed the morning much, said I could choose what we would do for the rest of the afternoon. Anything, I wanted to know. I wanted to be quite sure this was not a choice only between things considered suitable for children. Anything, he said stoutly. You earned it this morning. You looked so green, my gingerbread rabbit, that I thought you were going to throw up. We will go on the elevated railway. I'll gargle as soon as I get home, if you like, and catch any fleas that get onto me before they bite Marjorie. He agreed at once, and we spent a very interesting 2 hours rattling above the streets and seeing into people's windows when they put the lights on without drawing the curtains. It seemed a pity not to make use of the opportunity to go in the Underground Railway too, which would be an important adventure to put in my letter to Diana. So I said, now we will go back by the subway. Sure you wouldn't rather do that another day? It will be very crowded now, when the offices and shops are just closing, he suggested hopefully, but I was firm, and he laughed and said I was a glutton for punishment. Almost as soon as we had clicked our way through the turnstiles, I began to have doubts, and the roar of too many people in a hurry sounded so much like an underground river that was carrying any canoe into a whirlpool that I tried to become an Indian, brave, who would not be frightened even in such a dangerous situation. This didn't work properly because I had only started after Joan got so wrapped up in her feelings that she was too heavy to shift. I was rather feebly pretending to be leading my war canoes against an enemy tribe who had invaded our hunting ground when someone shouted, keep back, keep back!" But we were swept towards the voice as though we were logs in a beaver dam breaking under ice floes, until we jarred against another dam, men with their arms linked to hold back the surge of humans. I was squashed against one of the men, but under his arm I saw a small pool on the platform. Someone had spilled a pot of red paint on it, and I was surprised that people made so much fuss at the thought of getting paint on their shoes. Father tried to pick me up, but there was no room for him to bend down, so I steadied myself by holding on to his leg. "Don't look," he said urgently. I tried to keep my eyes shut, but my eyelids refused to obey. It was worse than not being able to hold them open against the nightmare. It was not red paint, and an old mackintosh on the platform. It was blood, and there was a dead body under the mackintosh. It was dead, or they wouldn't have covered its face. Someone sobbed. He jumped right in front of the train. I saw him. Then I saw the boots, large black boots with leather laces and tags sticking up at the back. The boots were standing neatly, side by side, next to the rest of the man's body, as though he had taken them off before getting into bed. But the train had taken them off for him. I cannot remember exactly what happened next, except that Father said, "Help me get this child out of here, damn you." And I was lifted over the top of hundreds of heads, which felt like flying in a dream, the kind when you are far too heavy to do it safely. Then Father and I were in the street, and my beaver muff was damp and smelled sour, so I knew I had been sick down myself, and someone had wiped it off while I was not noticing. "You feeling all right, old thing?" he asked. When I said I was, he patted me and said, "Well, I'm not." And we went into a hotel, and he had brandy and I had a ginger ale. "I don't think we'll tell your mother," he said tentatively. Would you rather we did?" "She'd only fuss, I agreed quickly. "I'll find the loo lady and get her to wash my coat for me, or Mother will think it was too many ice creams." "You're a very competent child," said Father, and gave me $1 for the loo lady, who said the English were tough babies when I told her about the boots. It helped to tell somebody. Father must have guessed that I wasn't looking forward to going to sleep, for he telephoned to Mother and said he was taking me out to dinner and a musical comedy, and then he put the receiver down quickly before she could say that I had already had too long a day. I was bustled off to bed as soon as we got back to our hotel, and went to sleep so quickly that I expected to have a nonsense dream about the things I had been thinking of deliberately. The dinner with Father and the singing girls dancing in a row with men in very shiny top hats. But I found myself standing alone on the platform, alone except for the boots and the man whose feet were still inside them. He was lying on his side, his hands clutching his leg stumps. Then he saw me, and at the same moment I saw myself. Instead of being only a child, I was grown up, about 18 I should think. "Agnes," he pleaded, "Agnes, help me." He loved Agnes, who had been his daughter more than anyone else, which is why I looked like her to him. I stood quite still, absorbing into me the love between them, so that I could use it to help him. As Agnes, I knelt down and put my hand on his forehead. "Shut your eyes, Pa," I said soothingly, "and I'll soon..." "And I'll soon get you fixed up. You've been at the whiskey again, and you are seeing things." He closed his eyes obediently, but he was still very frightened. His fear made it difficult for me to keep hold of his affection for Agnes, and at the same time act as the real part of me, without becoming clouded by little Joan's terror. My fingers fumbled with the laces of the boots, for the blood on them was black, and hard. But at last I peeled off the stiff leather and sat cross-legged with the severed feet in my lap. The toes were misshapen with broken, dirty nails, so I began to straighten them very gently between my fingers, breathing on the worn skin of the instep as though I was cleaning the earth from a windfall of apples. When he was ready, I turned him on his back. He appeared to be sleeping, and after I had made his clothes disappear, I washed him all over very carefully with water from a jar that someone had set beside him for me to use. His flesh was old and tired, even when it was clean again. But when I fitted the bones of his severed feet to the stumps of his legs, they began to grow together, and the new life in his feet began to flow up into him, and the skin and the muscle of his body gradually became young again. He had been a nice-looking young man, clean-shaven instead of a grey stubble of beard, and with strong fair hair instead of a few sodden, tattered wisps. I put him into a blue shirt and flannel trousers, as he was not yet used to being naked. The platform had changed while he was changing, and now he was lying on spring grass under a willow tree. Between the long leaves I could see tall buildings beyond the lake, buildings which seemed incongruous until I recognized them from a different context. We were in Central Park, and I thought I had not been loving enough to bring him safely into heaven. Then he yawned and opened his eyes, stretching his arms luxuriously in the warm, clear light. A girl in a pink dress came running along the path beside the bright water. He scrambled to his feet, laughing with joy, and ran towards her, calling, "Agnes, Agnes, I'm here, I'm here." And I was Joan again, a child who was not allowed to roller skate in Central Park. Battery's empty again.